What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're all somehow surviving through this desperate, horrible, dull, boring international break, which already 1 week in feels longer than what the entire summer did. But today we're going to help try to continue to fill this horrid void by revisiting my Championship League table predictions, which we do every season. We always do one at the start, we always then revisit it at the end of the transfer window when we've had a few games to see what each team is all about. And of course, as we do, we will be revisiting this at the end of the season to see how close or how far off we were with some teams. And let's start off with mine from, well, 24th to top. So we've got my initial league table on one side, and we're going to have my updated one, and let's see who's risen the most and who's dropped the most in my estimation, starting with the team at the bottom, dropping one position. I've got Plymouth Argyle. Now, unfortunately, as well as the initial pre-season pessimism with Plymouth, which was, of course, the appointment of Wayne Rooney, who's got a terrible track record as a manager in the Championship, I think the eye test and the numbers we've seen since proves that Plymouth, despite not currently sitting bottom of the Championship, are the worst team in the Championship currently. They've got equally the most XG conceded along with Portsmouth, and when you look at that and you consider how many chances and how many good teams Portsmouth have come up against, the fact Plymouth have conceded as many chances as them is a concern. Their goalkeeper's also made the most saves per game thus far, which shows how much their goals coming under threat, and they've also created the least XG, the lowest XG and the least amount of chances in the league by a mile. Everything about Plymouth going forward and going backwards is a cocktail for disaster, and if it doesn't change quickly, they will be going down, and things just don't look all that good right now. So for me, at this moment, Plymouth are the worst team in the Championship, and I don't like saying that because I really, really like Plymouth as a club, but as I thought pre-season, and as I think even more so now, unfortunately, they're going down. Now, the next two were really difficult, picking the other two teams to go down, because, yep, there's a few candidates that are a little bit concerning. Preston haven't started well. Cardiff, of course, are one. Can't count Luton in that relegation zone. So you think of other teams who maybe could drop in. Hull City are one, but I'm just looking at a few of them well-established Championship teams, and I feel like they will just have too much. So the two teams I've got in the drop zone along with Plymouth, I really, really fought over in my own mind, but I just feel like they're relying on their home form, and they're potentially going to let themselves down when it comes to the depth of their depth and quality of their squads, and what might happen when the fixtures really start piling up. And naturally, newly promoted sides have a bit of a good start. They carry a little bit of momentum, but once it stalls, it could stall quite quickly. And that's why in both 23rd and 22nd, I've got Oxford United and Derby County. Oxford have actually risen one place, Derby have dropped in. Now, both of these teams, I think, are in exactly the same position. I think they have to rely massively on their home form to survive. Their away form, I don't have much faith in, if I'm honest. And I think Oxford have looked better than Derby this season. I think Oxford have looked more promising. But again, it's a question of what will happen when the strength and depth of their squad is tested. I'm looking at other potential candidates. Pompey could be one. They're difficult to judge because they've only played really difficult teams thus far. I just can't see a Hull or a Cardiff or a Preston dropping in there at this point in time. I think both of these teams might go down on relatively high points tallies as well, but Oxford are the first one. I just feel like, again, when the season gets going and things get tough, that's when they might start to struggle. And Derby as well, albeit the Bristol City game was outstanding, that's one of a very, very few times I've seen this season Derby looking decent. Against Boro, it was a freak. They got tore apart by Blackburn away from home. I just don't think they've got it in them if they go behind to get back into a game. And again, when times get tough in the season, I fear for them too. So it's very, very difficult, very, very hard to predict which two teams would go down with Plymouth, as I feel like Plymouth are the only dead cert for me right now. But unfortunately, I just feel like there's teams above Derby and Oxford that will just have a little bit too much. 21st, I've got Cardiff dropping 6 positions. They're the team that I was the most worried about who could drop in, and the reason for that is I feel like they might be about to hit a crucial period in the season where if things don't pick up post-international break, we get to that October break, a lot of owners pull the trigger and start panicking, and if things don't turn around for Cardiff, I worry they might do that. Now, I'm not concerned about Cardiff going down because I think there's too much in their squad. The worry I've got with them is if they panic, sack Bullet, change manager, there's chaos, there's just lack of stability, things just get worse and they snowball, and we see what happens with teams when this happens. They end up going through 2 managers, 3 managers, and they just get themselves tied up in a panic, and their season never really gets going. And I worry if things don't get going for Cardiff after this break, they might slip into this chaotic spell where they panic a bit. I think they'd be better off just sticking with Balut, because they're not the worst team in the league. They shouldn't be bottom of the league. Yes, they've not started well. I just worry they're a couple of bad results away from potential panic ensuing, and that might send them on a spiral where they will be in a relegation battle. And that's why I think if that happens, they could go close, albeit again, their squad means they should just about stay up. In 20th, I've kept Pompey where they are. The reason for that is, as I say, I don't feel like I can judge Pompey fairly yet. They've had such a tough start to the season. Getting 3 points out of, Leeds, Boro, Sunderland, though the 4th team has escaped me, I feel like that's a great return. However, the numbers do say that Pompey probably should have lost to Leeds. They should have lost to Boro. They should be probably a lot worse off than what they are. But the points they've got, regardless of if it was a bit of luck or the teams they've played not having their shooting boots on, Pompey have proved they can pick up points when they've not potentially earned them or deserved them, which is a great trait to have as a newly promoted side. But again, how they're going to fare against teams that are maybe in and around their area, teams that might be in mid-table, they might fare better. Who knows? Or, as I've said when I spoke to Tom from 4-0 Written All Over It when he come up to the Riverside, the question is Pompey's style of play, which is, it's quite brave, it's quite expansive. I liked seeing that at the Riverside, I'll be honest, but is it sustainable? Can they sustain that and not get themselves in more trouble? That's the question. So I can't judge Pompey one way or the other. Things could improve massively when they start playing teams that aren't as good as the ones they have, or they might still struggle, and it proves that the way they're playing needs to be tweaked, because they are conceding a lot of chances. So I've kept them where they are for now, but I do feel like it could go one way or the other. In 19th, I've got Preston dropping by 1 place. I already had Preston struggling, so I'm not massively overinflated where I thought they'd be in my initial predictions when I had them 18th. I've dropped them down 1 position here. Again, I just feel like they're not going to have the sort of season that they did last year. I don't think they've got it in them to get into the top 10 as they have done in the past. But the reason why I think they'll steer clear of trouble is Heckingbottom. I think he's a solid appointment, although I still don't think Preston are going to catapult themselves back to where they've been over the last few seasons. So I'm just happy to keep them where I had them, which is lower mid-table. In 18th, dropping 5 positions, I've got Hull City. Now, a reason for this is I think there are a lot of other teams that I had below Hull initially who have looked better than I thought they would. I had Hull 13th initially. I think you look at Sunderland, you look at Watford, you look at Stoke, Swansea. I think all look better than what Hull do, and I just can't quite wrap my head around what Hull City are. Obviously, as we discussed at the start of the season, they've lost so much quality, both going out the door permanently and via the loans they lost, and I just feel like it might take Tim Volter quite a while to get the team playing the way he wants to, and even if he does, I just don't feel like they've got the quality they once had. So that's why I think they'll be mid-table at best. The reason I've dropped them down a few positions is I think there are quite a few teams, as I say, who I did put below them, who currently look better. In 17th and 16th, I'm going to pair these two together. I've got Stoke and Watford maintaining their current league positions. The reason being is that I've got no reason to think otherwise. I think Stoke are Stoke, and I just won't buy into any hype or excitement around Stoke until we see it culminise at the end of the season when they are somewhere other than 14th to 18th. So that's just me with my very careful Stoke hat on, refusing to get embroiled in any sort of excitement around Stoke, because we've seen them do it for the last 5 or 6 seasons. They always end up in the same position, regardless of recruitment, regardless of manager. And I've done the same with Watford. Listen, they've started the season really well, but they've had a generous start fixture-wise, and although I don't think they'll be in as much trouble as a lot of people pre-season predicted, I'm still not that sold on their overall squad and its depth and its quality, and the underlying numbers do say that Watford have overperformed quite significantly, so I think they'll naturally regress into mid-table, and as I say, there are a couple of other teams that I just think over the 46 games will be better. In 15th, rising 4 places, I've got Swansea City. I've mentioned this in a lot of my roundup videos and prediction videos. Swansea have this position reserved for me. They just look as middle of the road as it gets. I've put them a bit high because I feel like they are doing better things, and I am a fan of some of the signings they've made. But again, I just feel like they'll beat a lot of the teams that are going to struggle, but they'll also fail to beat a lot of the teams above them. I just don't feel like they've got the consistency one way or the other to really be in and around the top 10, outside the playoffs, or be in all that much trouble. Swansea scream mid-table mediocrity to me, and that's why I've put them 15th. In 14th, dropping 5 places, I've gone with Sheffield Wednesday. Now again, it's really hard to judge them one way or the other because we know Danny Rowe's a fantastic coach. We know what he did when he come in last season and turnaround was outstanding, but you can't not be very concerned by what has happened since the opening day. They played Plymouth at arguably the best possible time, and as I've said, Plymouth are the worst team in the league right now. But since then, Sheffield Wednesday have been absolutely awful. You know, they've lost to Millwall by 3-0. They've lost to Leeds. They've lost to Sunderland 4-0. There's something wrong there. I don't know what it is. I mean, the recruitment looked fantastic, but as we always say, bringing in a ton of players is fine, but getting them to work together in the same system that works is a different prospect. And so far, Sheffield Wednesday look off it. Now, I'm not going to panic to the point to which I think they're going to be back where they were last season, but I think you've certainly got to just hold your horses and stall a little bit on the top 10 aspirations that we thought they might have, or some people even thought they might be outsiders for playoffs. I think you've got to look at them currently and think that that's just not going to happen with a lot of teams who I think will be a lot better off. So I'm not getting too concerned by Wednesday at this point. I'm not going to start panicking by any stretch, but I think it's more than realistic to just park your expectations and just drop them a few positions because, I mean, right now, they don't look good at all. In 13th, I've got QPR dropping 1 position. I've got nothing else to really say. I think I've only moved QPR because there's a few teams who I've got to improve, who have impressed me quite a bit. But QPR, I think, will be exactly where I had them previously. They look like a solid mid-table side. They're going to take a step forward under Cifuentes. They don't have the quality in their squad to fight for playoffs. They don't have the depth, in my opinion, but they're not going to be in any form of trouble. I think they'll take a good, natural step forward this season, and the hope is if they can keep him and keep developing what is a good thing at QPR. They are taking very good steps and making good progress, but it's not going to just flip them into a playoff team overnight. This will be, I think, a season that will just be a step towards better things for QPR, and they can hopefully just continue to build and kick on in the future. So this season, as I say, mid-table, 13th, still think it's a good season for them. In 12th, right in the middle, rising 10 positions. They're my biggest risers in the whole league. I've gone with Blackburn Rovers. I cannot help but be incredibly impressed by Blackburn, and I did say, in my previous prediction, I was extremely worried about them recruitment-wise, but literally straight after, pretty much in the week that followed my initial prediction video, Blackburn bought a ton of players. So when I made my initial prediction, they'd signed barely anybody. After that, they signed loads of players, and a lot of them look like very good recruits, I'll be honest. And I did say the one thing they had going for them was John Eustace, and he's proven that again. He is such an underrated coach at this level, and what he's gotten out of this Blackburn team thus far has been fantastic. And I'll say the same thing that I have for a number of teams, that I think they've started well. It's fantastic for them. We've seen Blackburn start well before, but they will naturally regress, and I just don't think they've got the quality to be in and around the playoffs or where they are right now. But I think, given everything that's happened with Blackburn and how close they come last season to going down, mid-table would be fantastic for them, and I think that's probably a realistic target. So they're my biggest risers. I've been very impressed with their start, very impressed with their recruitment. 12th place is Blackburn Rovers. In 11th and 10th, I'm going to pair these two together once again. It's Millwall and Bristol City. Again, a bit like Watford and Stoke, I've got no reason to move either of these two teams. I will say, I did think I'd have Millwall higher, but when I was putting my teams together, I just looked at other teams and I thought, I can't have them lower than Millwall, as much as they've had a great start, and they are looking very, very good. I had Millwall 11th initially based off of the fact that they'd continue what they did last season, which was very impressive under Neil Harris. And I think they've done that. I think, again, they'll be disappointed that they've conceded the goals they have done, because if they didn't, they'd be so much more better off. And as I mentioned in my expected points league table I did the other day, expected points-wise, Millwall should be in the playoffs right now. But they've let themselves down defensively, but I think a few tweaks here and there, they're looking good, Millwall. They're looking very good, but I just don't think they'll have enough to compete with what is going to be a very, very strong top 8, top 9, which I think is pretty much set, to be honest with you. So I think they'll they'll fight, they'll be in the top 10, top 11, which I think is a great finish for them. And again, it's a big step forward from where they were last season. As for Bristol City, no reason to change them either. There was a little bit of optimism to start the season where a lot of people thought, oh, hang on, these could be dark horses for the playoffs here, but Bristol City, a bit like Stoke, always bring you back down to earth and remind you why they have sort of been lingering in mid-table for as long as they have done. I just don't think Bristol City will have the consistency across the season. I stand by my previous prediction. I think 10th will be a step forward with Liam Manning, and he will continue to take Bristol City forwards, but I just don't think they've got enough, and I don't think they'll have the consistency in them to be a playoff side. We've seen it already, a 3-0 defeat to Derby. They just have these results and performances in them, Bristol City. They always have done. They always have a bad streak in them. As much as they could go on a winning run of 3, they could then follow up with a losing streak of 3. So it's very hard to bank on and rely on Bristol City being consistent enough to break into the top 6 above a lot of teams that I just think are a little bit stronger. So that's why I'm going to keep them where they are. And like Millwall, I thought they'd have strong seasons. I thought they'd take a step forward. And I think that's exactly where they'll be. In 9th, I've got Norwich dropping 2 positions from 7th. Again, they're in and around the same area as to where I had them previously. I think since my last video when I had them 7th, they have lost a few key assets, which has made me just drop my expectations slightly. Plus, the new manager remains a factor. I think he's going to get Norwich going. I think they're slowly finding their identity under him. They're getting used to what he wants. But again, as I said earlier in the season, in my earlier prediction, I just don't think they've quite got the squad and the quality that the other teams do above them. Plus, since then, they've lost Johnny Rowe. Plus, since then, they've lost Gabriel Sara. So I still think they'll be in and around it. I still think they'll be knocking on the door. They'll flirt with playoffs. I just don't think they'll quite get in there. In 8th, dropping out of the playoffs, I've got Coventry City. I relied on Coventry having a better start to the season, and that's why I had them 6th. But they've done it again. They've proven that, again, they just can't start the season well enough. They don't look as strong defensively as I thought they would, and attacking-wise, they've not really clicked yet. As every time I think Sims and Wright could be the perfect duo, they then have a game where they won't score, and then I don't know with Coventry. There's something holding me back at the moment. Obviously, Sheaf's injured as well. Don't know how long he'll be out for. So I just feel like there's a few little red flags peering that are just putting me off Coventry at the moment. And we've seen other teams start the season really well, as I say. I think it'll be a very, very tough top 6 this season. And I just feel like it could be the same as last season for Coventry. You know, it depends how quickly it'll take them to get going. And if they give the opposition and their competitors a head start again. But as it currently stands, they've done just that. That's why I'm going to just park my optimism on Coventry. And unfortunately, I have got them dropping out the playoffs. I've got them down in 8th. Dropping 6 places, the team I did have as my champions, Luton Town. I've got them not only dropping out of the top 2, I've got them dropping out of the playoffs. I'm very, very shocked, to be honest, by Luton and how they've started the season. Now, they shouldn't be second bottom. They're performing a lot better than that. They've missed a lot of gilt-edged chances. I'm very surprised that Adebayo and Morris have missed the chances they've had. And if they start banging them in, could be a different story. But defensively, Luton just don't look like the same team. And they have not adapted very well to coming back down at all. I thought they'd be the best at it. I thought they'd be the most solid team. They could just pick up from where they left off. Calm, collected, solid, with a lot of players that were very good at this level before. I thought they'd just crack on. But they look the worst of the 3 teams who've come down. Sheffield United and Burnley have cracked on miles better than what Luton have. And there just appears to be a little bit of, I don't know, the fans seem a bit unsettled. I've seen a few comments about Rob Edwards. I don't think they'd be stupid enough to sack him if things don't pick up. But again, a bit like what I was saying earlier about Cardiff. What happens if they get to October and that international break and Luton are still nowhere near? What do they do? I don't know. I feel like they're on a bit of a knife edge if the next block of games aren't good enough. I can't stress how important the next block of games are for Luton before that October international break. But I just feel like they're struggling to acclimatise. They're struggling with their style of play. They're struggling with, I think, the tag of being one of the favourites. And I just worry that they're just not going to quite have enough. Their recruitment hasn't been as strong or as bold either as a lot of the other teams who've really gone for it. So when I was just putting my top 6 together, there were too many teams that were in there that I just couldn't take out, and that's why Luton had to be a casualty. and are not even in the top 6. Could change massively, but the next few games are so important for them. In 6th, sneaking into the playoffs, rising 8 positions, I've got Sunderland. I see Sunderland like I did 2 seasons ago under Tony Mowbray. I think they'll get in there. I do. I've been very impressed by the start to the season, but listen, we're seeing Sunderland fans saying they're going to win the league and all this. It's been 4 games. Listen, they look fantastic. They look really, really good, really solid. They look the full package. But we need to see how they'll react to their first defeat. We need to see how they'll react when teams start adjusting to Reggie Lebree's style of play. Obviously, he's a new manager coming in. A lot of other managers, a lot of other coaches will be trying to work him out, work out what Sunderland are doing. I think when they do start to be worked out by the top coaches in this league, how will they adapt? How will they change? Plus, they've got a very, very young side. And again, see what happens when we get into the real meat of the season across the winter, where squad depth's massive, injuries will come. I feel like there are a lot of hurdles that we still need to see this Sunderland side get over, because I still feel like there are teams, well, the 5 teams above them are examples of teams that have better squads with better coaches who've done it and been more successful in this league. So I think Sunderland still, despite their great start, have a lot of things still to prove. I have to stress it's only been 4 games and I'm not taking anything away from them as yet, but we've seen many sides start the season like a house on fire. Preston, Blackburn have done it in the past. They drop off quite significantly, so it's all about what happens when that inevitable drop-off happens and how Sunderland react. Can they adapt? Can they keep changing? Or will they get worked out? Will the young players hit a bit of a bump, as inconsistently young players often are? So we'll see what happens with Sunderland, but I think you've got to have them in the top 6 just by how well they've looked this season. In 5th, dropping 2 positions, I've got Burnley. Now, I had Burnley 3rd, and I had that sort of, they'll be automatic promotion contenders. They'll just miss out. I don't think they'll be automatic promotion contenders now. And the reason for that is I'm not convinced by them. I wasn't convinced by Scott Parker beforehand, and I think everyone sort of agrees that he's had sides in the past that have had so much quality. He's had Mitrovic, he's had Solanke up front. He's just had quality sides that have just gotten them through games, and they've often overperformed and been ridiculously clinical. And we've seen that already from Burnley this season. But there's just something not quite right about Burnley, which makes me just hold back on them being top 2 contenders. I think things could change, yes, when their squad starts to gel. They've had massive turnover of players, of course, so if that starts to click, we might see Burnley really kick on. But I think at the minute they're still just a playoff team. I don't quite think they'll be top 2, but surely with the squad they've got to be top 6. And if they're not, Scott Parker has failed massively. But I have got them to drop 2 positions, still in the playoffs. I've got them 5th. In 4th, I've got the Boro. I've got us rising 1 position. I've not got much else to say about Boro, if I'm honest. I had us 5th. I felt like we'd take a step forward with the squad we've retained. We have retained every single one of our best assets. We've added in some fantastic areas, and the numbers tell me that we are the best creative team in the league, one of the best defensive sides in the league. And like I was saying about Plymouth earlier, just flipping that's a cocktail for success, albeit if we're clinical. And that's the one thing I'm concerned about with Boro. Can we be clinical enough? Can we also stop silly individual errors, which have already cropped up this season? If we do that, we'll be right up there. And I said this on a video I did on my TikTok. There are 4 teams who I think have a big chance, maybe bigger chance than ever before, of getting into the top 2 this season. I think Boro are 1. I had Coventry, Luton and West Brom. They were 4 teams who were non-parachute, by the way, I must stress. Non-parachute teams who've not been relegated, or a Leeds United, who I felt like have a bigger chance than ever of getting top 2. One of them is in the top 2, but Boro, I don't know, maybe it's just the amount of times I've been hurt by this football club. I just feel like we'll not quite do it enough, and we'll probably shoot ourselves in the foot too many times. We won't get top 2, but we should have more than enough in our squad to get top 4, in my opinion. And I think everything we're doing right now on the pitch is right. It's very, very good, and once it clicks, I think we will be very, very tough to beat. But I just don't have faith, as I say, that we'll be one of them teams who does burst into the top 2 and take that golden opportunity. And I'll quote what I said in that TikTok video. The one thing that I think is going to stop Middlesbrough Football Club from getting top 2 is Middlesbrough Football Club. In third, rising 5 positions, I've got Sheffield United. I've propelled them into the playoffs and I've got them third. Now, a big reason for my pessimism initially around Sheffield United was we had no idea how they were going to start. We had no idea how changes in the turnover in their squad would work, but they've settled incredibly well. Now, they don't look spectacular. They don't look like they're going to blow teams away every week, but they look solid and they look like they'll just get results, especially at home, and I think they'll just get enough points away from home as well. They'll be consistent, and I just feel like they've calmed down and settled any real pre-season worry around them, and what they've done is very impressive, I'll be honest. Off the pitch, the players they've brought in, how they've sort of managed this whole situation off of the back of an awful season. I feel like there's just a little bit of calm now, a little bit of clarity at Bramall Lane, and that will enable them to just get on with the job at hand. And a bit like West Brom did last season, I think they'll just pick up points quietly, gradually, without blowing teams away, and their consistency will get them into the playoffs. Plus, they've got a fantastic team. They've got a fantastic team with some top championship players, and if they gel in the way they have done, they'll be in the playoffs without a doubt. At the minute, I've got them third. In second, the team I have got taking that golden opportunity, beating the parachute sides and sneaking into the top 2, I've got West Brom. It's all down to Carlos Corberán. He started doing it already. He's taking a team that maybe shouldn't be top 2 and he's just maximising everything he can out of them. He just does this. He does this every single season, Carlos Corberán. He's the best. He might even be the best coach in the league. I'm going to say it. He's fantastic, and how tactically intelligent and flexible he is, I think he will just get West Brom there. I feel like if there is a team who's going to break into the top 2, when other teams from who've been relegated might be struggling a little bit, it's West Brom. They've already shown this season how they can just pick up points in games where they maybe shouldn't. They'll win tight games. They'll come out on the other side of really tight games and they'll pick up really important points. So for me, I think that second place is up for grabs more than ever this season, and I feel like the team most likely to take it is West Brom. And top of the league, rising by 1 point, my champions are Leeds United. And again, like Sheffield United, like a lot of other teams where there was a little bit of concern a few weeks ago with players leaving, etc., I think Leeds have managed the situation pretty well. Now, I don't think their squad's actually as good as it was last season, but I don't think the competition is either. I think without Ipswich and Southampton and Leicester, Leeds have a much better chance of getting top 2. And I said in my previous prediction, they just need to repeat what they did last season. And inevitably, I think they'll be up. And we know with Daniel Farke, his record of getting teams up with 90 plus points. He does it every season. No reason to doubt that he won't do it again. And I think we've seen just before this international break, the 2 solid victories they have, things have settled at Leeds United, and I think they can now just kick on. And I said in my expected points league table video, I feel like they're the team who, if they get going, they'll be very tough to catch. If Leeds can get a run going, I don't think anyone will catch them. I really do. So for me, I think the quality of the championship is lesser this season. The relegated sides are nowhere near as good as the relegated sides from last season. And I still feel like, albeit they've not got as strong of a team, their coach is still more than good enough. And that's why I think Leeds United will, when they get going, run off into the distance. They'll probably hit 90 points again, which really, in any other season, would get them promoted. And this season, it'll get them up as champions. So there's my league table prediction, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Have you revisited yours? Have you changed yours? Are there any teams who have impressed you more compared to your pre-season predictions? Any teams that you're a lot more concerned about? As I say, we will revisit these at the end of the season to see how far off I was with some of them. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for much more championship and football related content, of course. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you all next time.